Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Untraditional Industries here on Our Bite You. Today we have a special guest, TJ Muraca, the VP of Sales and Marketing with Katz Americas. So thanks so much, TJ, for joining us. I'm excited to learn about what you all do over there. And I know Emily is, pumping you guys up. So if you could give us a little bit of information on, your background, just an overview of Katz Americas for anyone watching maybe don't know who you all are.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this conversation. Katz is a niche paper converter, I would say. There are a few products that we make, but we are headquartered in the United States in Buffalo, New York. We have a sister company in Germany in Weisenbach, which is our paper mill. So the main product that we convert is beverage coasters. We have a few other things that we've been kind of getting into in the past 10 years, but our main product still is that. And we're about 90% of North American beverage coasters that we manufacture between a location here in Buffalo and one in Johnson City, Tennessee. It hasn't been a traditional industry by any means. Our client base has been ever evolving with the beer industry and with the advent of obviously like the craft industry has been a huge explosion in the past 15, 20 years for us, but we've kind of focused on everything that isn't that in our growth. So we've looked at non-beverage brands, non-food brands as an opportunity for us to grow. And that's kind of been what I've been looking at in my endeavors over the past decade or so. Personally, I'm from Western New York. I'm born and raised here. My background kind of took a few different weird turns. I was in computer engineering at University of Pittsburgh, and I kind of felt that was more of a hobby than anything. And I kind of did a U-turn and ended up getting an MBA in leadership. And I took that and started in the gaming industry, where I was working at one of the local casinos here with the intention of moving on to Las Vegas. And I was going to be the first MBA in Vegas. I shouldn't say that. I don't know if that's the case, but that's not something that traditionally people have when they go work in Las Vegas. And I thought that was going to be my rise to fame, but that was around 2008, and the economy had a different plan for us all. And I didn't end up going out that way, but joined Katz around that time. And we had just been purchased by a private equity group, and they needed somebody to pretty much be the liaison between the two facilities as we tried to upgrade our technology. And that was what I was going to do for the foreseeable future. I was going to be a special projects manager here, and then I would move on when they were done with me. And, that was 13 years ago now. And I've been able to see the company and the industry continue to evolve, and it's allowed me to stay here. And really, I've been able to witness a lot of fantastic things with this company. And we're in a place now where I believe we're the strongest we've ever been, even amidst this pandemic. We're in a place with our brand and with our clients that we've been working towards for quite some time.
That's awesome. So you said so many things that it kept making me like, wow, we have a lot of similarities. Like before we filmed this, you were saying how you guys have an office in South America, and then we do, and then you saying you have a sister company in Germany. We don't have a sister company in Germany, but name is German. And then you mentioned gaming, and I was like, oh my God, video games? And no, it was casinos. So it was so that's a wow,
Yeah.
quite a journey.
Oh, if I had my choice, it would have been in video games. I mean, honestly, that was probably one of the reasons why I didn't continue in engineering, because I was too busy playing video games at Pitt, to be honest with you. And that's a very, very difficult education that, like I said, it was more of a hobby than anything. But
yeah.
Did you want to make video games? Is that why you went for computer engineering?
I wanted to program. That was really what I was looking to do. And that was 22 years ago. And that technology was very different than it is now, I think. And that was more ones and zeros. than anything. And it was really hard for me to translate my success when I was looking at that industry. It was hard to see, like I was repeating a lot. And that's how I was seeing it when I was learning code, as opposed to when I actually went into poli-sci and I was able to kind of argue more, and my personality came through more in that. And then my MBA also was able to try and hold my persuasiveness, where you can't really do that in like an engineering area. You really have to continue to repeat patterns until you find a breakthrough. Whereas the industry that I'm in and my other education, I should say, allowed me to be a little bit more creative with my arguments.
Yeah. Well, if I have the timeline right, I think you've been there for over 10 years, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
this
seems like a good fit.
April will be 14.
Yeah,
Actually.
that's
So
awesome.
yeah, so like my best laid plans to only stay here for a year, so I'm happy that that didn't happen. But
Yeah, awesome. So can you just tell us a little bit about the problem that Katz Americas was trying to solve and is trying to solve in the industries that you serve?
sure. Simply put, we're trying to help people and brands be heard. Um, we have, well, I would say we have a very biased but research checked claim that our audiences that are using our product is the most captive audience in the world. Traditionally, somebody sitting at a bar or a restaurant table, and they're not passing through. They're sitting there at their own choice, and they're staying there for some time. And we've been looking to expand our B2B and B2C offerings, and that has been challenging because, as I said earlier, the beverage industry was pretty much who was ordering coasters. So we had to kind of create a new argument, if you will, as to why brands that normally wouldn't order these products should order these products, because the product is the most, I should say, the customers are seeing this product over and over again, and the purchasing decisions are being affected in a positive way over the traditional media. So we ultimately were trying to help clients, or the potential clients, be heard over all the noise in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I know I play with my my coaster every time, and I read it if I have one. So I would agree with that. The most captive. I mean, when there's a lull in the conversation, you just play with the coaster and read it. So I'm curious to know what some of the risks were when you start. You've been there for 14 years,
Mhm.
so I'm assuming you've tried things since you've been there. And I'd like, what are some of those risks maybe that you've taken? And then also, to add a second part of that question, is with COVID, what are some of the risks that you all saw going into it in this type of business?
Sure. So the biggest risk with our evolution has been alienating or cannibalizing the original customers that brought us to the party. Um, Traditionally, coasters were rarely seen as an accessible product to the general public or small businesses, because traditionally beer brands were the ones that would order them. And it was considered part of the branding. If you ordered a keg of Guinness beer, the brewery would include the coasters with that, and you would put that out there and serve it in a Guinness glass on top of a Guinness coaster, and that was part of the brand. So as we tried to make our product more accessible to other, companies and even the small, breweries, it really put us in a position that we didn't want to, like I said, alienate the larger brands. We wanted to be sensitive to the fact that we're not trying to not focus on their importance any longer, but we're trying to make it more accessible. Because if you understand, there's some areas that these beverage brands are not touching anyways, and we were trying very much to serve those areas. And another thing, that we've felt over the years is, this is something that I don't know if it's a term, but it's getting teched out, like getting technologied out, where our product is it's actually a 305-year-old product. So it was being manufactured in Europe in 1716, and the way that we're still doing it now. So with that, length of time comes a lot of opportunities for other products to be made that could make our usefulness obsolete. And, there's chances, not to say that this is on the horizon, but like, what if there's a bar that is absorbent, or what if there's a glass that doesn't sweat? So the material nature of our product allows us to be teched out, if you will. So it's one of those things that we worry about often. And then with regards to COVID, early on, we're a physical product that people touch, multiple people touch, and when it's given to the consumer in front of the product, someone is actually handling it the moment they give it to you. So there's not a lot of chance to sanitize, and it's a paper product, so it doesn't really marry well with the idea of how to sanitize that. So early on, we had a lot of concerns. We had people reaching out to us asking if we could create a plastic or a non-porous material. Obviously, we, being a paper company, we don't have that kind of portfolio to offer those alternatives. But we really had to stay close to understanding the guidelines and understanding the virus and understanding if these things really are happening. We don't want to try and be insensitive to ignore that and to try and sell our product despite that. But in some cases, we also looked at our product, which we wouldn't always want to promote this before, but as being a disposable product, something that they can use. We would prefer, because that's a lot of the usability, is having multiple uses with a beverage coaster. You don't just throw it out after every use. It's created in a fashion that allows it to absorb and then wick away moisture over and over again without changing its shape. But we kind of had to embrace the idea of it being disposable, at least until we understood where this was going. We started to push some of our clients who had that concern on some thinner materials that were less costly, which allowed that idea to be translated a little better in their minds. There is still obviously a function to our product with regards to the material being absorbent. So we want them to be able to use these things, especially in the cases that on a bar top, if you don't want your bar to be wet, you still have to use something, either a napkin or if it's a coaster. So we had to just be very sensitive to what was happening and communicating that without being intrusive. Like, we don't want to say you should still order this because we have all these other great attributes to our product. We wanted to say, well, if you are concerned about that, if you consider a thinner material, you can dispose of them after every use. And then, one thing that fell into our laps, funny enough, when we talk about being teched out, was the QR code again. QR code started 15 years ago, right? And we saw this wave come and go as augmented reality and other things kind of came in and took the place of that. And, we had this surge of QR codes back in 2010, and then it went away. And then all of a sudden this year, as you saw, people started asking, like, can you print these? And you're like, yeah, of course. Like, and it allowed us, to really listen to what the market wanted and then use that as a little bit of a marketing strategy during this too, to show the power of the QR code on a product that already had a material usage, has these marketing and advertising benefits, and now can communicate to your audience the steps you've taken to keep them safe, or the contactless options that everything is operating with right now. So kind of certain things kind of fell into our lap like that.
Yeah, QR codes have become like almost every restaurant I've been to since COVID has had that instead of a physical menu. So that's
Yeah.
a really interesting point. I never would have thought of that. So our next question is a two-parter too. So I know you mentioned you have a very high level mission for your company, which, although you're in manufacturing, you're responsible for the visibility of the brands you work with, which is awesome. So can you just talk a little bit more about how you define success in your role for Katz Americas, and then also maybe how you personally define success with the very interesting, path that your career has taken?
Yeah. So for Katz, as you said, we have a lot of brands and even individuals that we support with our products. And, we're just a tiny part of the overall puzzle of their strategy and their approach to their market. But when we see a brand success, and we see, we luckily have access to new products, obviously before anyone else does. They need to ramp up all the collateral, and if there's a new beverage brand, or there's a new movie coming out, or if there's a new perfume, like literally, like they get all these things running ahead of time before they launch it. So we have, we're very lucky to have access to those things. So when we see a brand succeed, or if we see a product launch, or and obviously having the privilege to work with them, we take a lot of pride in that relationship, and it in a way kind of justifies our existence, even if it's just a moment in time. But yeah, like that's something that we all enjoy very much. We've been lucky to also kind of be in the right place, right time for some, some pop culture things, and with the rise of, Schitt's Creek. Like we had a couple of lines of coasters we did for them, and people would like share them all over the place. And obviously we didn't design them, it wasn't our plan, but we made them, and I saw them on social media all over the world, and like it was just lines that I think it might have been David, like little character lines that they had, and it was just a lot of fun because like we did that, and nobody knows that, but we do. And unfortunately, the chain of ordering these comes through three middlemen usually. We're just the manufacturer, so again, no one really knows who did it, but it's just fun to be able to see those sorts of things. And then more so for Katz again, we operate in the promotional products industry, is basically where our growth has been seen. And it's like, it's funny because it's like on the surface, it's a sexy industry. Everybody's having fun, like making everything, everyone's brand on there. And then when you're in it, it's like so granular. It's like, what's the price per piece? What's, the cost per added value inks. It's just like, it's so weird to think like it's not sexy at all. And it's all, based on the price per piece. And what we've done, just because I think my personality, I excel in humor, and that's kind of how I bridge the gap sometimes with relationships. I think that comes through in our branding initiatives and our marketing stuff and our website. Like we're a little weird. And if you saw our website, it's really strange when it's compared to other players in that industry, and that website is catered to the promotional products industry. We get a lot of feedback. We get emails. People say, "I love your website," or "I love your e-blast." Like we're weird, and it's fun because it's a little too dry sometimes in those industries that I don't want to be mundane, and I don't want to be lost in the shuffle. So you don't typically get someone emailing you saying love your website. That's all they say. It's not like we want to order from you now. We don't want to. We're just getting feedback that says I love your website, or your e-blast was very funny. Which makes me think that our mission, trying to be heard amongst the noise, for our clients to be heard, is working for us. We're trying to be heard amongst the noise. That industry, I don't want to water anything down, including our products, but there's a nickname, it's just called tchotchkes and trash, like stuff you just get with logos on them. But I don't want to be that. I want to be more than that. So that when we have that kind of feedback, it definitely feels like a success. So from the personal side of things, I love leading people. I don't like being a boss at all. I hate that. I don't like being anybody's boss, but I love leading people. And when I see somebody, maybe it's kind of the same thing. When I see somebody that I have led succeed or move on or do anything past our relationship, I feel that's a reflection on my work, and that what I did had a positive influence in some way. They didn't go the other direction, which is good, I guess. But I think that if you look at it from where that could lead, that kind of gives my effect on the world an exponential value. If somebody took what I did and made the world better, and it's kind of difficult, to feel successful in a world that like throws a new challenge every day at you, and like you forget what you did yesterday, and like that you succeeded yesterday. So I think personally, if I translate that to another individual, it allows me to always like frame it like I helped that person, and that person is helping other people, and then hopefully that becomes a tree of people being helped.
That's an awesome way to look at success, I think. And I love that you embrace the weirdness. That's so cool. It's yeah. I can imagine in that type of environment it'd be, yeah, maybe that was a risk even doing it at first. But I definitely checked out your website and I noticed that, and I think it's cool to embrace that for sure. Um, on that note, and you mentioned some of these challenges, I think already, but maybe there's other ones. Um, but what are some of your biggest challenges since you've been with the company, and have they changed since in the past 14 years?
Yeah, they have changed. I'll say that first. But what's funny is they kind of do stay the same if you look at it from the standpoint of trying to stay relevant. Like us just trying to stay relevant. It kind of goes back to what we said earlier. Being teched out or everybody having um, a limited amount of money to spend and they spending it on a different product than ours. So trying to stay relevant, which lends itself to having to always evolve our language. And we've had some help, some outside help. We've had some great internal initiatives that have allowed us to connect with our clients using different languages and different approaches. Like I said, if we don't stay ahead of the industry, we risk obsolescence. And even talking to industry, not just being weird with our website to stand out, but we took an approach to start to quantify the value of promotional products. And that's something that the industry had not done yet. It's something that they're doing a lot more of now. But we partnered with some local universities to put together data. Obviously, it allowed me a lot of information to put in our collateral and allowed us to change our, like I said, our approach from a material to a marketing or branding, media. But I feel, at least maybe they were doing it in the background, but I'm going to say like we revolutionized the promotional products industry because we got out there first with trying to quantify the value of our product, and then they followed suit. We actually received an award for that, being a company that was taking the industry in a new direction. Like I said before, though, that doesn't mean we're here to stay. If something comes in to challenge our existence, or there's a technology that comes up that can stop a drink from sweating, as I said. But what that creates for us is the need, for aligning both the physical usability of the coaster with the values from the branding and marketing standpoint that doesn't doesn't wipe away the material functionality, but it justifies the material for the ancillary properties that brings to the coaster. So, a lot of puns in that sentence.
So it seems like you've taken quite a lot of risks with your company, and I love that. So can you share maybe a risk, because the ones that you've shared so far, they sound like they've been working out really well. Maybe a risk or a mistake that didn't necessarily work out, or just something that you learned something from, a lesson you can think back on.
Sure. So this is a little, I'd say generic, but keeping something alive longer than you should, whether that be a project or a product or whatever, thinking that, eventually somebody's going to understand, at some point you just say it's not translating well and you have to kill that. There's been a few things, and I'll actually give you an example soon. But that can kind of lead right into just not listening to the market. Like the market dictates who you should be. And I was even joking, like, VRBO was supposed to be VRBO until the market calls it Verbo, and now they call themselves Verbo. Like that changed their name. The market said you're not called VRBO anymore. It's Verbo. So I think a big mistake is not listening to the market. And that, should be actually a tool. If you listen to the market, you can craft a sales pitch that's perfect. If you listen to what they want, I talk to my colleagues when we're at a trade show or if we're visiting a client. You got to ask questions before you tell them why they need you. You got to figure out exactly what they need before you tell them what they need. You know? But the example that I think of with regards to keeping a product alive too long, or just insisting that the market needs it, is we actually partnered with an augmented reality company in 2012. We partnered with Blipar, which was out of the UK, which is one of the first technology companies on the scene that was offering it in a capacity to allow us to buy the licensing for it. And I pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. Like, we made more mailers and we brought them to every trade show. And, you know, it just wasn't translating to the audience that I was trying to put it in front of, you know, and I think we had the license for about 8 years, and the technology is awesome. Product is awesome. It's just the audience that we were trying to sell it to did not see the value. And it goes back to the you know, the dollars and cents of it, that people are buying things on how many pennies this costs. And when I bring in this added value application that is going to skyrocket the price, but give them all these great, you know, features that they didn't want, it just didn't translate. And it was painful to make that decision, because it was something that I thought was going to be, as I say, getting tapped out. Like, that was going to be how we bridge that gap. We're going to be this product, but also have that there's no more gap in between those two. But I still believe in it. But the audience that we've been going after with that, I think it's still a little behind in adopting that sort of thing. But that would be the example of not listening to the market and trying to force it down the throat.
Yeah, I've added these 2-part questions all the time, but I find so this next one's going to be a 2-part too. So can you share with us how you find most of your customers, and then has that changed? Because you mentioned trade shows, so I'm assuming that's going to be maybe one of your avenues.
Yeah.
But with COVID, you know, trade shows stopped. So has it changed with COVID?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So going back to where we started, you know, we were pretty much the only game in town. And, you know, I'd say when we started, we're 42 years old, the company. There wasn't any manufactured beverage coasters in the United States. So, you know, the relationships that we formed early on was with the direct brand of the beer. So we still have those relationships in place. The Anheuser-Busch's of the world, you know, Heineken, all those big brands, even restaurant brands like Outback, we work with them directly, and the relationship is one-to-one. There's nobody in between. But as we were trying to transition that, obviously to go after a larger, you know, clientele, you either have to hire people or go through resellers. And the reseller network that was existing in the promotional products world seemed like the best fit. The product fit into their categories. It allowed access immediately to, at the time, probably 5,000 to 6,000 or 7,000 companies. Now we're up to 22 or 23,000 member companies in the organizations that we're a part of. Which, again, if you look at that exponential, you know, angle, those 20,000 companies can access 20,000 customers each, and that's, you know, how we thought the best way to market. We had to change some of our internal operations to be able to accommodate smaller run sizes, a little more, you know, flexibility on turnaround time. Originally, the market was we would print a year's worth of posters for certain, you know, clients and keep it on the shelf, or 6 months worth, and we had to drastically change our operations to be able to do turnarounds of less than a week now and very low quantities. So we actually we tapped the University of Buffalo's engineering department. We created some software with them, which was a lot of fun when I was a part of that. But that created this environment where we had to continue to get in front of those resellers, which is where trade shows came into play. And we were doing probably 7 to 10 a year at one time, because there was a lot of regional ones, and some of them started to consolidate into larger ones. So when it comes to that reseller world, prior to COVID, I'll say, It was going to 1 to 2 trade shows a year. They were a week-long trade show. We would be planning for 6 months at a time. We would have the lead up mailings, the post mailings. And we would pretty much rely on those efforts and continue to add to our customer list with new customers there. But you're limited, obviously, on who wants to go to the trade show. You're limited on the amount of time each person has when they're there. So it wasn't obviously the only and the best way to do so, but we were always continuously trying to find new ways. So fast forward to this year, we've started to transition that more into a digital marketing approach. We overhauled our website. We're still, fine tuning that as we are unfortunately, but lucky enough to kind of be in this pause year where nothing's moving as fast as it used to, and we can make mistakes a little longer than we probably could have before, and allow us to analyze those mistakes a little longer without fixing the wrong thing. So, we're trying to transition into that, and that kind of comes with the B2C approach where, I want to sell coasters to somebody who wants them at their desk at work with their wife's face on it. How do I get that in front of them? I also, want to support, as I always say, the partners that brought us to the party or the dance, and I don't want to ever alienate the resellers. So I want to create their experience to be a better one than they had prior to this, so I can keep them around. That's how I sell all these posters. So we are trying to create more of a digital presence for them, to create toolboxes for them to take with them, or create an environment that can support their sales efforts of our product online, as opposed to only trying to meet them in person once a year. So it's a new endeavor for us. So we're learning that angle. We are trying to implement a lot of the things we had hoped we could do if we only improved our website, if we only improved our social, all these things that we said we're going to do, like we've been focusing on this year, just creating a new language to how to talk to people.
Sounds like you have a very agile team over there. You guys can do.
That's a good way of putting it.
It's a silver lining, it's like it forced you into doing these things that you sound like you wanted to do, right? So
Yeah,
the silver lining is expedited some innovation.
absolutely.
Well, this episode has already been full of advice, but if you could pick one piece of advice for someone who wants to be in leadership, what would you say?
It's easy to say now. Probably didn't do this when I was younger, but it's definitely to listen more. Listen to your team, listen to your customers, or whoever you're working with. I think when I came onto the scene, even in my first, manager jobs at the casino, I always wanted to have the answer all the time, and I would say something without having any idea if it was right, and then regret it for a few days, knowing I said something wrong. So I think going back to the approach that we have with our customers, asking more questions and understanding who you're talking to or what they're looking for before you give them guidance, I think is important, and isn't just guidance, but before you even try and sell anything to anybody, you should find out what they need. I don't think anybody should feel like they need to solve all the problems at their first go. You can make mistakes, but I think the biggest mistake that I've made is not listening when I should have. When I feel like speaking gives you authority, sometimes it's listening.
Yeah, it's like learning from your mistakes is super important, and listening is, I think that's probably something that a lot of people wish they did more of,
Mhm.
or should wish they did more of. But so this, yeah, I didn't know much about Katz Americas going into this, and I went into it was really cool learning about everything that you guys do. So I appreciate that. So we'll end here on one more question. But what was your favorite thing about being based in Buffalo?
This isn't going to be a two-parter. One-parter.
No, it doesn't change with COVID, I don't think.
Well, personally, I love being under the radar. It's one of those things that, I can go about my business, and going back to making mistakes. I think like people who don't know that you exist, so you can make more mistakes than you may have been willing to try. If everybody knows you and sees you, so I like kind of being under the radar. But I'm very fortunate to be able to travel the world for my job. Not this year or last year, but normally, obviously, as we said in the beginning, having a location in Germany, I would be in Germany a few times a year. And then the trade shows or the customer visits, we'd be on the go all the time. Back then, returning to Buffalo was fantastic. Coming home to that city and my loved ones, and I don't know if this would translate, but the ease of access that Buffalo has for you, whether that be, the drive, the commutes are easy, and everyone's friendly from my perspective, luckily. And I know Buffalo well. I know how to get around Buffalo well, and everybody has that shared love that allowed me to really appreciate it more when I would come home from these trips. So being able to see the world obviously was fantastic, but knowing that I would come home to Buffalo made it very special too.
It's obvious it stays with you. You got your little Oxford pennant, "Let's go Buffalo" back there. So that's awesome. But TJ, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for giving us, a little insight into Katz America's history and then also your history. So thank you, Emily. Thank you for hosting with me. And for everyone watching, thanks so much. Hope this was valuable for you, and see you next time.
Thank you very much.